Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into the world of green finance in India.
Sound exciting.
It is. We've got this report, Landscape of Green Finance in India.
From the Climate Policy Initiative.
Right. Plus, we've got info from government budgets, international organizations.
Even corporations and venture capitalists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the end of this, you'll know how India is investing in a greener future, what challenges they face, and what it means for the rest of us.
It's really a story of growth and climate action happening at the same time.
Okay, let's get into it. This 2024 report highlights something pretty amazing. In fiscal year 2021 to 2022, India's tracked green finance hit a record high.
A record high.
Yeah, we're talking about INR 3,712 billion.
Whoa.
Roughly $50 billion annually.
And this was during COVID. That 20% jump from 2019-2020 shows their commitment.
Wow, that's serious money. But before we get carried away, let's define some terms. What exactly is green finance? How does it fit into climate action?
Okay, so climate finance is basically any financing for climate change action. Green finance is more specific. It's climate funding, but also investments with environmental benefits, like protecting biodiversity.
I see.
Then there's sustainable finance, the broadest one, aiming for a world that's good for the environment, but also the economy and society.
So India is putting its money where its mouth is on climate action.
Yeah.
But is 50 billion USD enough to meet their goals? And where is it all coming from?
Well, the report says 83% is domestic, split pretty evenly between public and private sources.
So it's not just international pressure. India is really stepping up themselves. I'm curious about the details. What do these public and private contributions look like?
On the public side, a lot comes straight from government budgets, especially for clean transportation, like those super efficient mass rapid transit systems.
Right. Efficient public transport reduces pollution. A&D makes commuting easier. Win-win. But what about the private sector?
It's a mix. You've got big corporations going green, but there's also something unique to India public sector undertakings, or PSUs, companies with government stakes that play a big role in green investments.
Interesting.
And get this, these PSUs have been issuing green bonds on international markets, attracting global capital.
Hold on. So they're using government-backed companies to tap into global green financing.
Clever. Tell me more about these green bonds. What makes them special?
Imagine a bond, like an IOU, but specifically for projects with positive environmental impacts.
So a label that says, this investment is going towards a greener India. Makes sense. And it sounds like international investors are interested.
Absolutely. International green finance is also rising, with commercial banks leading the charge, especially for solar energy. India's solar market is booming.
Okay, so we've got local and global money flowing in, but where is it all going? What are the key areas?
The report highlights three main sectors: clean energy, energy efficiency, and clean transportation.
Those are crucial for going green. Any standouts? Where's the bulk of the funding going? Clean energy takes the biggest share, 47%. And within that, solar projects are leading. Think huge fields of solar panels turning sunlight into electricity.
Wow, India's going all in on solar. I'm guessing their ambitious renewable energy targets are driving this solar surge.
You got it. They have ambitious targets to increase solar and wind in their energy mix. And they're not just throwing money at it, they're creating supportive policies and establishing solar parks.
Wait, solar parks? What are those?
Imagine zones specifically for large-scale solar power. Pre-cleared land, ready-to-go grid connections, all the essential infrastructure. This streamlines development, making it easier and less risky for investors.
It's like they've built solar cities to attract all the right players. Brilliant. But let's not forget energy efficiency and clean transportation. What's happening there?
In energy efficiency, the report focuses on, surprisingly, energy-efficient appliances.
Really? Energy efficient appliances. That seems, I don't know, a bit ordinary. Why are they such a big deal?
It might seem mundane, but with India's population booming, small changes in individual households can mean huge energy savings nationally. More efficient refrigerators, air conditioners, lighting. Across millions of homes, that adds up.
It's about scale. The butterfly effect of energy efficiency.
Yeah.
Small changes multiplied millions of times over. But are they actually seeing results?
The numbers say yes. Finance for green buildings jumped 27% compared to the previous report. So the government's policies and incentives are working.
That's encouraging. So they're tackling this from multiple angles: solar parks, energy-efficient appliances. What about clean transportation? Any highlights there?
Clean transportation got a 94% funding boost between 2020 and 2021. Public funding is still the biggest driver, but private investment in electric vehicles or EVs is picking up.
So India is really charging ahead on EVs. I bet this has something to do with their goal of 30% electric car sales by 2030.
You're right, they're aiming for that. And they're supporting it with things like the FAME 2 scheme, which focuses on making EVs more affordable.
Just like with solar, they're not just relying on the market, but actively creating a good environment for EVs. It sounds like India is being very strategic about building a greener future.
Absolutely, and this brings up an interesting point. This whole conversation has been about mitigation, reducing emissions, but there's another side to climate action, adaptation.
Oh, right. We can't forget about adaptation. Remind me, how is that different from mitigation?
Mitigation is about preventing climate change, while adaptation is dealing with the impacts that are already here. Rising sea levels, extreme weather, changes in rainfall.
Right. It's learning to live with a changing climate. So what's the report say about India's approach to adaptation?
Good news. Tracked adaptation finance almost tripled between 2019 and 2022, reaching INR 1,092 billion. They're realizing that building resilience is as important as reducing emissions.
Tripling their investment. That's impressive. What caused this big increase?
Seems like a few things. There's been a shift towards disaster risk management with a new fund to boost preparedness. And for the first time, the report tracked spending on climate-resilient agriculture.
That makes sense. Investing in preparedness now can save a lot of trouble later, and making agriculture more resilient is vital. But I'm curious, with all this talk about a green future, are there any challenges or hurdles that India faces in reaching these goals?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore more in the next part of our deep dive. It's amazing how India is handling all this, while trying to make sure everyone benefits from this green transition.
That's such an important point. We've been talking about the environment, but a sustainable future needs to work for all Indians, right?
Yeah.
How is India making sure this green push helps its people?
Well, they're focusing on decentralized renewable energy solutions. Instead of just huge power plants, they're bringing clean energy to rural communities.
Oh, I see. Like using solar panels and microgrids.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're giving power to the people, literally, making sure the benefits reach even the most remote places. I love that. Any other examples of this focus on social equity?
Job creation in the green sector is a big one. They're really pushing skill development and training programs, getting people ready for jobs in renewable energy, energy efficiency, all these new green industries.
Creating a green workforce, that's smart. Making sure people have the skills they need as things change. But you mentioned challenges earlier. What are some of the hurdles India faces in scaling up its green finance?
One of the biggest is the lack of a standardized green taxonomy.
A taxonomy.
Yeah, think of it like a rule book.
Yeah.
It defines what counts as a green investment. Without it, it's hard to measure the impact of green finance, and you get greenwashing.
Ah, so you need a shared language, guidelines to make sure everyone's playing by the same rules and that the money's really going to green projects.
Exactly. And without it, it's tough to attract international investors. They want to know their money is making a real difference.
So a good taxonomy is essential. What other hurdles does India need to overcome?
There's the risk that investors see in green projects, especially in emerging markets.
Right. Green technologies are still developing. Investors might hesitate, especially in a market they don't know well.
Exactly. And that's where government policies and incentives are important. Clear signals of support can make these investments less risky.
So a stable and predictable policy environment. Tax breaks, subsidies for renewable energy, easier permitting processes.
Yeah, anything that can bring in more private capital.
Makes sense. What else can help make these investments less risky?
Data. Investors need good data on how green projects are performing.
So if, like, without a map, you don't know how to get there.
Exactly. Better data collection and reporting is crucial to build confidence.
So we've got ambitious goals, supportive policies, and cool financing mechanisms like those green bonds. But they also need to tackle standardization, risk, and data transparency.
It's a balancing act. But remember those public sector undertakings, the PSUs, they're really important here.
Oh yeah, the companies with government backing.
Yeah, by their nature, they're often involved in these big infrastructure projects, and that aligns with the green transition.
Ah, I see. They're already in sectors like power generation, transport, and renewable energy.
Exactly. So they're already in the green space.
Yeah.
And that government backing makes them seem like a safer bet to investors.
So they can get funding more easily.
Yeah.
Smart, using their position for good.
Yeah. But we also have to make sure these initiatives really work on the ground, right?
Right. It's not just about spending money. It's about making sure it's used well and that the benefits reach the people who need them.
One crucial thing is making sure the money reaches those most affected by climate change.
The communities on the front lines.
Exactly. We don't want all the funding going to big corporations, leaving out the people who need it most.
So, equitable distribution. Making sure the benefits of green finance are shared, reaching those most at risk. How do you make sure that happens?
Well, there are targeted lending programs for these communities, capacity building for small businesses, even community-based financing, where local groups decide how the money's spent.
A more diverse system, tailored to different needs. Makes sense.
Mm.
A one-size-fits-all approach won't work in a place as big and diverse as India.
Right, and it's not just about green outcomes, it's about making sure the process is sustainable and equitable, too.
Avoiding unintended consequences. So how do we do that?
Careful planning, environmental and social impact assessments, and most importantly, talking to local communities. Their voices need to be heard.
So it's participatory development. Communities are part of the process, shaping their own future.
Exactly. It's about respecting their knowledge and their right to be involved.
This goes beyond the financial side of green finance. It's about sustainable development, transparency, accountability, good governance, making sure these investments are used well and ethically.
Yes, creating an ecosystem where green finance can thrive and where the benefits are shared fairly.
And this brings us back to adaptation. We've talked about financing renewable energy, energy efficiency, electric vehicles. But what about financing the ability to adapt to the impacts of climate change that are already happening, especially for those most vulnerable?
That's a vital question, and it brings us to a sector that's right on the front lines of climate change: agriculture.
Agriculture. Okay, let's talk about that. How is India using green finance to support climate adaptation in agriculture? So we're talking about helping farmers adapt to climate change using green finance. What does that actually look like?
Well, it's important to remember just how diverse India's agriculture is. You've got everything from rain-fed farms in dry areas to fertile plains with huge river systems.
Right, so different regions face different challenges from climate change.
Exactly. So a solution that works in one place might not work in another.
So you can't just like promote drought-resistant crops everywhere and call it a day.
Right. You have to look at each region's specific problems and find solutions that fit.
Okay, I see. So a farmer in the Himalayas has different needs than someone on the coast.
Exactly. In dry areas, maybe focus on efficient irrigation, collecting rainwater, and growing crops that can handle less water.
Working smarter, not harder. But what about places with too much water, like areas hit by floods or rising sea levels?
Then you might need flood-resistant infrastructure or crops that can tolerate salt in the water. Early warning systems are crucial too, so farmers can prepare for extreme weather.
It's like adapting to what's coming while also fixing what's already broken. And I guess money is a big part of making all this happen. How can green finance help meet these needs in agriculture?
One interesting idea is climate-indexed insurance.
What's that?
It pays farmers based on the weather, not actual crop losses, like if there's not enough rain or if it gets too hot.
So it's like a safety net, even if the crops don't completely fail.
Right. It helps them recover and maybe invest in more resilient practices.
That's really cool. Any other innovative financial tools out there?
We're also seeing green bonds for adaptation.
So like those IOUs we talked about earlier.
Yeah. But specifically for projects that make agriculture more resilient to climate change, like building things to capture rainwater, developing drought-resistant crops, or investing in climate-smart farming techniques.
So making sure the money goes to the right places. But it's not just about the money, is it? Farmers need the knowledge and skills to adapt.
Absolutely. You need to invest in education and training programs.
So farmers know about climate-smart agriculture and all that.
Exactly. Give them the tools and information to make good decisions and be resilient.
Right. But even with knowledge, they need support. What about the infrastructure and technology they'll need?
Another area where green finance can help. Think about climate-resilient irrigation systems that can handle both droughts and floods, or better early warning systems to warn farmers about bad weather. These investments can make a big difference.
It sounds like it takes a lot: financial support, knowledge, infrastructure, technology, a whole ecosystem to help farmers thrive.
It does. And you can't just impose solutions from the top down. You need to involve local communities.
Make sure the solutions actually work for the people using them.
Exactly. In the end, it's about building a stronger and fairer agricultural system, one that can handle climate change and still provide food and livelihoods for years to come.
So as we wrap up our look at India's green finance landscape, it's clear they have big ambitions. It's not just a green economy, it's about a better future for everyone.
And what's exciting is that they're just getting started. What India is doing is showing the rest of the world that you can grow your economy and prioritize the climate and social equity.
It shows that these challenges are all connected, right?
Yeah.
Climate change, sustainable development, they need solutions that work for both people and the planet.
And India is facing these challenges head on. They're creative, determined, and they believe we can solve these problems.
So to all the green finance pioneers, the policymakers, the entrepreneurs, and most of all, the farmers who are adapting to a changing world, we applaud you. What you're doing gives us hope for a greener, more just future.
And to everyone listening, keep learning about this stuff. Read the reports, have these conversations, think about how you can help build a green transition. Every little thing counts.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep learning, exploring, and diving deep into the world of sustainability.